This is a story about how my actions over a single 24-hour period had unintended consequences. Consequences that had life-shattering effects on others and caused me to have the worst mental health crisis of my entire career. And it's a crisis that I still bear the emotional scars of today. For this story, we have to go back about 21 to 22 years, and I had just graduated from vet school just a few years earlier. And as a first-generation college student, I had tons of student debt. I had a practice payment. I had a mortgage. My wife and I had 2 small children at home. And although my practice was busy and growing rapidly, we had very little money and tons of stress. And it was summertime, and I saw a St. Bernard with dehydration, diarrhea, and fly strike. And you know the case. The smell, the diarrhea, matted hair, and the hundreds of maggots in and on the skin. This dog needed more than just a groom job. And so I hospitalized the dog and for treatment. Just remember that dog for right now. The next day, I saw a Dalmatian with acute kidney disease. This dog was so ill that I thought if we didn't hospitalize it right away and get some IVs going, it was going to die. And so I presented a treatment plan to the owners, and right away the owner said, "Ooh, I don't know, Dad's going to have a fit if we come home without this dog." And they told me how they live with their elderly father, and he and this dog are inseparable, very, very tight. And they said, "I totally understand, but if I don't keep this dog for treatment, then it's a good chance that your dad won't have this dog for very much longer." And so they reluctantly agreed, and we got started with the treatment. We hospitalized the dog. So the next morning, I came in, and both of the patients looked a little bit better. And I was told by my practice manager that before I started seeing appointments, I needed to call the Dalmatian owner right away. So I called the owner, and she said, "Dr. Francke, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to have to leave our dog with you for at least a couple more days because, you see, my dad died last night, and it was unexpected, so we have to make arrangements for his funeral." And my mind immediately went to the conversation of the night before. And had I upset this poor old man so badly by keeping his dog that he had had a heart attack or something? And I felt directly responsible for his death. So I, of course, expressed our condolences and said we would, of course, do whatever we could to help. And I put on my game face and I went back to work. So remember the St. Bernard. Now, later on that same day, I thought he looked quite a bit better. In fact, I thought he looked good enough that he could probably go home. So I called the owner up and I said, "Hey, good news. This is Dr. Francke. Your dog looks pretty good today. And in fact, I think he could go home today if you can only come and get him." And the owner said, "Great. I'm going to call my husband at work, have him head over to the animal hospital so he can help load up the dog. And as soon as I get a hold of him, my daughter and I will get in the car and we'll come in and meet him there." So a little while later, the husband shows up at the animal hospital, and it's right at the end of the day. So we're standing there making small talk for probably 45 minutes or so, and his wife still isn't there. And so he makes a couple of cell phone calls that go unanswered, and so finally I just said, "You know what? Just leave the dog here again tonight. Go check on your wife. She's probably got a flat tire or something." So he agrees, and he left, and we closed up shop. So the next morning I come in, and as soon as I walk through the back door, I'm told that I need to talk to the practice manager immediately before I do anything else. And so I went up and I talked to her, and it turns out that after the husband had left the animal hospital, he drove down the rural 2-lane highway that our animal hospital is located on, and he came upon an accident scene. And there were emergency vehicles present, and to his horror, it was his wife's car. And it turns out, as she was coming to the animal hospital, she turned directly into the path of a tanker truck, causing a horrific accident. His daughter was already dead at the scene, and his wife was being loaded into an ambulance, where she died at the local hospital just shortly after. So this poor man had just lost half of his family in a blink of an eye. And I had to give him a call right away. And I called him, and I told him how sorry we were. And I said, don't worry about your dog. We'll keep your dog for as long as you need us to keep it, free of charge. Just worry about everything else. So, with the Dalmatian owner's death still fresh in my mind, my thoughts immediately went to this. I've just killed 3 people in 24 hours. My actions were directly responsible for their deaths. If I had figured out a way to send that Dalmatian home with the family like they wanted me to, would that old man still be alive? And if I'd have just called the St. Bernard's owners 15 minutes before or 15 minutes after when I actually did, that tanker truck would not even been in the location to hit their car. So I was almost dysfunctional with grief and guilt. And I wanted to go home, but I didn't think that other people would understand how I felt. So I somehow sucked it up and got through the day. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have these just for my own. But now I was at war with myself. Not only was I the workaholic veterinarian that could barely support his family, but now I was the killer of 3 wonderful people. And over the next week, those animals went home with their owners. But did they realize that I was the reason that their loved ones were dead? And I kept going to work as if nothing had happened. And I tried to tell myself that it wasn't my fault, but I didn't really believe it. And my team and my wife told me that, it wasn't my fault and that I was just making the best decision that I could under the circumstances. But I wondered sometimes if the world would be better off without me. And if I could figure out a way for my wife to collect on my life insurance policy, would dying be the best way that I could take care of my children? So I needed therapy, and I was dangerously close to the edge, and those that were around me didn't even realize how badly I was struggling. So you might say that the debt was keeping me in the profession, and my wife and kids were keeping me alive. Then one day after church, I decided to talk to my pastor. I needed the opinion of someone who wasn't related to me, and someone that wasn't on my team, and someone that wouldn't lie to me just to make me feel better. And so I told him my story, and he said something like, "Look, you're a great person. You do good things for people each and every day. But if you think you're the master of time and space, you're not." So exactly. So he said, grieve for these people, of course, but don't feel responsible for their deaths in any single way. And that short little conversation was an important turning point for me to be able to heal. With time, I started to realize that I was also a victim of circumstance, that I needed to forgive myself, that my family was better off with me than without me, and that I was a good veterinarian. And if I could only stay healthy, that I could help thousands of animals and people during my career. And I have. I've survived. I've thrived. I've contributed to my profession and my community in hundreds of ways. I've raised 2 beautiful, wonderful, successful college-educated students, or kids, I'm sorry. They're not students anymore. I've had a great marriage. I've helped take care of my extended family. But it all could have ended very differently, very tragically, but it didn't. So here's the things that I learned. You are not the master of time and space. You know that parvo puppy that you could have saved if only they would have brought it to you like a minute or a day earlier? Well, guess what? They didn't, right? And the things that are stressing out someone that you know and love may not seem logical to you, but it doesn't make them any less real to them. And you can't always tell if a person is suffering. That's the scariest lesson. Suffering can be hidden. So encourage regular conversation with the people that you care about, especially if you think that they've suffered some sort of trauma. Things will change and things get better. So you know that debt that you're carrying from your practice or your school debt, it's going to go away. And is your family budget super tight? Well, it'll get better. And besides, love is more important than money anyway. If you're struggling, get help. Start with your EAP plan, NAMV, Uncharted. Talk to your pastor, your spouse, your friend, whoever you can confide in. But don't stop talking, because there's no shame in getting the help that you need. Your family needs you. The profession needs you, and the world needs you. And just remember that all of us in this room have a story. None of us goes unscathed. Veterinary medicine is hard. Life is hard. But you are not alone. Thank you.